just heard was my little demo of the Revival Drive Compact with the Keeley Tone workstation and the HX Stomp, trying to get a John Mayer kind of tone. So I just wanted to show you how this works. So what I start off with is just a click at 94 BPM. I use Reaper, by the way. And I start off with one audio track with a stereo input, so that's coming out of the HX Stomp. Do the same stuff whether I'm using Iridium or a Kempo or whatever, the process is generally the same. So first thing to do is find where the 1 is. So there it is. So I'll move that back to 1. And then what I do is find the length of the loop, which here I know is 4 bars. So I split down and copy onto another track, and then I duplicate what came before, and then the same again for however long the loops continue before I get to the solo. And then I'll mark where the solo is. Now here's the solo, so I'll move that down to a separate track, and then duplicate out the loop for the rest of the track. Also I normalized this before I've started this duplication, so you go item processing, normalize, so that just brings it up to the highest volume before it starts to clip. So now what we've got is this with a click. So then what I'll do is move the 3 loop tracks down in volume slightly so that the solo is a bit more prominent. And then I will add in a drum kit, so virtual instrument on new track, and there's a few drum kits that I like to use. One is the jazz kit from Kontakt, and the other kit that I like to use is the stadium kit from Studio Drummer. So I just add in the jazz kit, which is like a brushes thing. I've already tried to record this once, so what happens now is going to be slightly different to what you just heard, but this is the process. So insert new MIDI item, kick drum. So I'll normally start with like a 4 bar or 2 bar phrase, sorry, or even a 1 bar. And then I'll normally do something to differentiate the end of a 4 bar phrase at the start of a new one, so like an open hi-hat for instance works well. And then I'll copy that out for the rest of the track, and then next step is to add in a bass, or if you're going to add in drum fills, that would be the point to do that. So I use Scarby bass quite a lot, or I also use Reactor synth basses, both Native Instruments again. So generally I'll copy the drum track down to get the rhythm, and then I'm just following chords generally, so E minor for instance is this bar. And then transpose for the next. That's a D. And a B minor. So that's my bass line, so I'll copy that out for it. And the other thing that I sometimes do is record either with a real bass or with a guitar, if it's like jazzy stuff, a guitar, and then I'll use an octave, I'll pitch it down an octave to get like a kind of synthy guitarish bass sound. It's kind of a bit different, but it works quite well for jazz. And then that's pretty much all I'll do, and then I'll go and put on the track a mastering plugin. And then just make sure things aren't clipping. And then if everything's not clipping, that's basically all I do, and then I'll render it and give it a name, and then I just sync that up to the camera audio. So that's basically my process for creating this stuff. Now the reason that I don't like to use any additional plugins or anything like that on the actual guitar tracks themselves is because I'm generally demoing gear either that, like for my Helix or HX Stomp presets, that I'm going to be, people can buy them from me, so I don't want to misrepresent what they actually sound like. And then, or if I'm doing a Kemper demo, it's sometimes for Tone Junkie, in which case I don't want people to buy the presets and then go, oh, it doesn't sound anything like the reality. And then the other reason is that I find it's important to show what pedals actually sound like in the context of a real mix, or with a real kind of band. The types of sounds that we actually hear of guitar is generally not one guitar with a fuzz pedal by themselves. Generally we hear guitar with a bass and with drums, sometimes with a vocalist as well. So that's why I do what I do. If there's any further questions on this, feel free to drop them. The other thing that I sometimes do is I'll overdub another solo, or I might stop the camera at that loop section and do this process before I record the solo. It just depends on how I'm feeling the loop went. And if I can hear the changes in my head, which generally I can, then I can just play a solo with it. Or sometimes I'll go, right, I'm going to stop, program in some bass and kit, and then I'll do my solo. Or solos. That's generally the way that works. So yeah, feel free to ask any questions. Hopefully this shows somewhat how I've approached going about my demos.